There's a moment in American history so important, so defining, that it should be carved into the national memory, yet almost nobody knows it happened. A law so strict, so uncompromising, that breaking it wasn't just a crime. It was treason against the very idea of honest money. And if you're new here, subscribe, because what you're about to discover is the part of American history they never teach. The Coinage Act of 1792 wasn't just a law, it was a warning, a line drawn in metal. Imagine a young America, fragile, exhausted, drowning in worthless paper currency after the Revolutionary War. Every state printed its own money. Debts were everywhere. Inflation ate through people's savings like acid. Merchants refused payment in anything that wasn't metal. Farmers were paid in paper worth less each month. Soldiers returning from war discovered their wages had melted to nothing. The country was free, but its money was broken. George Washington felt it. Alexander Hamilton understood it. Ordinary citizens lived it. If the new nation couldn't control its money, it wouldn't control anything else. A republic built on unstable currency is like a house built on sand. All it takes is one wave of speculation, one crisis, one bad harvest for everything to collapse. So the founders made a decision that feels almost supernatural by today's standards. They anchored the U.S. dollar to metal, real metal, weighed to the grain. 371.285 grains of pure silver. That was the dollar. Not an opinion, not a policy, not a target. A real, physical measurement. A moral contract. And gold, a precise 15-to-1 ratio. This wasn't economics. It was philosophy. A belief that money should reflect something honest, something stable, something no man or government could manipulate on a whim. To the founders, printing unbacked money wasn't a fiscal tool. It was corruption, a betrayal, an act so destructive to society that the Coinage Act declared currency debasement punishable by death. Yes, death. That's how seriously they took the integrity of money, because they had lived through the chaos of the continental dollar, a currency that collapsed so violently it gave birth to the phrase, "not worth a continental." They had watched inflation wipe out families. They had watched paper money destroy trust. They had watched governments use printers the way kings once used swords. So in 1792, America made a decision that would shape everything that followed. Money would be pure. Money would be honest. Money would be metal. The U.S. Mint was born, not just as a factory, but as a guardian. The silver dollar wasn't an object. It was a promise. The gold eagle wasn't a coin. It was a guarantee. And for a brief, extraordinary moment in history, the United States built something rare. A monetary system based on trust that didn't require trusting anyone. But the founders made one mistake, not in the system they built, but in the system they assumed would survive. They believed future generations would honor that contract. They believed the lessons of inflation were permanent. They believed Americans would never again allow the value of their money to be manipulated. They were wrong. Because the story of the Coinage Act isn't the story of money itself. It's the story of how America forgot it. A story of slow erosion, tiny policy shifts, markets changing, wars demanding more than the Treasury could afford, and a government discovering, almost accidentally, that paper is easier to control than metal. The act didn't collapse in one moment. It faded. It weakened. It dissolved quietly under the pressure of ambition, war, politics, banking power, and the dangerous realization that you can control a nation far more easily when you control the currency that flows through it. But before all that corruption, before the slow unraveling, before America stepped away from metal and into the world of fiat, there was this moment, 1792, the last time American money was pure, certain, honest, and protected by law like life itself. And understanding how that moment died is the key to understanding the monetary world we live in now. To understand why the founders fought so fiercely for honest money, you have to imagine the world they inherited, a world collapsing under financial chaos. The Revolutionary War had ended, but its damage lingered in the bloodstream of the economy. Farmers couldn't trust the currency they were paid in. Merchants charged wildly different prices depending on the paper they accepted. Entire communities bartered because coins were so rare they felt mythical. America wasn't suffering from inflation. It was suffering from uncertainty. And uncertainty is more dangerous than poverty because it destroys the ability to plan, to save, to build. A family can survive hardship. What they cannot survive is the feeling that tomorrow's money won't mean what today's money means. Hamilton understood that better than anyone. He had grown up poor, abandoned, and acutely aware of the consequences when systems fail, when institutions collapse, when money evaporates. To him, the stability of a nation wasn't built on victory or patriotism or unity. It was built on accounting, on weights, on measures, on trust. So when Congress debated the Coinage Act, it wasn't a discussion about metals. It was a discussion about morality, about what kind of country America intended to be, a nation ruled by laws or a nation ruled by the whims of politicians who could print value out of nothing. Washington didn't hesitate. Jefferson pushed hard for silver. Hamilton fought for a bimetallic standard. And together, they crafted something unprecedented, a monetary system that punished dishonesty at its core. 371.285 grains of silver. That number appears almost mystical today, but back then it was a symbol, a declaration that the United States would not manipulate or devalue the money of its citizens. A dollar was a dollar because you could hold it, feel it, weigh it, measure it, verify it without trusting anyone. Imagine the psychological power of that. Imagine living in a world where your government couldn't quietly siphon your wealth through inflation. Imagine money you didn't have to fear. That was the dream of 1792, a dream built into law. But even the best systems face reality. The balance between gold and silver, that perfect 15-to-1 ratio, worked beautifully on paper. It worked beautifully in theory. And for a time, it worked beautifully in everyday life. But the world didn't freeze for America's convenience. Markets shifted. Mining output changed. Gold discoveries altered global supply. Silver flowed out of the country. Gold flowed in. And slowly, quietly, the elegant balance of the act began to crack. Good money disappeared. Bad money circulated. Gresham's law, the ancient law we discussed in your previous documentary, came alive inside the young republic. Silver coins, the very foundation of the dollar, began vanishing from circulation. People hoarded them, exported them, melted them, because the market valued the metal more than the face stamped on it. The founders had built a solid machine, but global markets had plans of their own. The truth is, the Coinage Act didn't fail. It was outmaneuvered by the world. And that mismatch, that tiny crack between law and reality, became the opening that politicians and bankers would spend the next 200 years widening. Every deviation from silver, every tweak to gold ratios, every wartime emergency measure, every temporary suspension of metal redemption started as a small exception, a justified break from the rules, a necessary response to crisis. And every exception pushed America 1 inch further from honesty and 1 inch closer to fiat. The shift didn't happen overnight. It happened like water erosion, slow, quiet, relentless. By the mid-1800s, the moral foundation of 1792 was already shaking. Silver was slipping away, gold was taking over, and the country reached for the one tool the founders feared most: paper. Unbacked, unrestricted, untethered. During the Civil War, the government issued greenbacks, currency with no metal behind it at all. No silver, no gold, just ink. Hamilton's machine had been breached for the first time, and the consequences were immediate. Prices rose, savings collapsed, trust fractured. The very nightmare the founders tried to prevent came roaring back. But once a government tastes the convenience of printing money, it never forgets the flavor. And America never went back to the way things were. Because after that moment, after that first breach, every future crisis would trigger the same reflex: print, suspend, manipulate, control. The moral contract of 1792 was dissolving, not in a dramatic collapse, but in a slow, quiet abandonment. And the people who understood what was happening, the bankers, the legislators, the financiers, realized something powerful. Once you control the money, you control everything built on top of it. By the time the 19th century unfolded into full view, America was already living in the shadow of a quiet mistake. Not a violent overthrow of the founders' monetary vision, but a slow, subtle drift away from it. A drift so gradual that most citizens didn't notice it, and those who did could do nothing to stop it. The Coinage Act of 1792 had been built like a fortress. Metal, weight, purity, accountability. But even fortresses crumble when the pressure doesn't come from outside, but from within. And the pressure was growing. Silver vanished because the world valued it more highly than America's fixed ratio. Gold dominated because it became the easier metal to keep in circulation. And suddenly, the perfect balance the founders imagined had turned lopsided. Not through corruption, not through malice, but through the unstoppable force of global markets. This imbalance became the opening for the first true betrayal of the 1792 vision, the Coinage Act of 1873. Historians call it the Crime of 73, a decision so consequential that it reshaped the financial destiny of the country, and most Americans never understood what had been taken from them. In one stroke, Congress removed silver from the monetary system. Not debated, not explained, removed. Overnight, the bimetallic promise of 1792, the promise that every American could rely on two metals, two anchors, two protections, was gone. The nation shifted quietly toward the gold standard, and with that shift, something deeper changed. Money lost its balance, and power found its opening. Gold favored bankers. Gold favored creditors. Gold favored those who already had money, not those earning it. Silver had always been the metal of everyday people: farmers, workers, merchants, families. Removing it meant removing the people's shield against elite control. And this wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of an economic hierarchy, engineered not through laws of equality, but through laws of scarcity. The logic was simple. If you control the anchor of money, you control the direction of society. And gold became the new anchor. The founders had designed money to protect the public from government manipulation, but the gold standard protected the moneyed class from everyone else. Debt became harder to pay back. Creditors became more powerful. Deflation rewarded those who lent and punished those who worked. And slowly, the original spirit of the 1792 contract, fairness, began to rot. And that rot spread. By the early 1900s, something else was happening. Something far more dangerous than silver disappearing or gold taking over. The government realized debt was profitable. Banks realized money creation was power. And together, they found a partner that would transform American money forever: the Federal Reserve. A year that deserves the same weight in history as 1776 or 1865, but rarely receives it. The creation of the Federal Reserve didn't replace the Constitution, but it quietly replaced something almost as important: the control of money. The U.S. dollar, once defined by grains of metal, became a creature of policy, a creature of decisions made in closed rooms, by men whose names never appear on ballots, whose power exceeds anything Hamilton or Washington ever imagined. The Coinage Act of 1792 said, "We trust the people with honest money." The Federal Reserve Act said, "We trust ourselves with unlimited authority." And the consequences would echo through every corner of the 20th century. The Great Depression, the banking panics, the confiscation of gold in 1933, Americans forced, by law, to surrender the very anchor that once protected them. Think about that for a moment. The same government that once made currency debasement a capital crime, now made owning real money a federal offense. And the supreme irony? The moment the public handed over their gold, the government revalued it higher. Wealth transferred upward in a single stroke. The greatest extraction of value from citizens in American financial history, and it happened in silence. The founders would not have recognized the world their country had become. Then came 1971. Nixon, the final severing of the dollar from gold. The last remaining link to the moral contract of 1792 dissolved with a single televised announcement, not debated in Congress, not approved by citizens, not weighed against the warnings of Hamilton or Washington. Just gone. From that moment onward, money no longer reflected metal. It reflected power, decisions, manipulation, policy tools, an endless capacity to print, inflate, dilute, and control. The death penalty for debasing the currency? Forgotten. Now debasement wasn't a crime, it was a strategy. Inflation wasn't a failure, it was a policy tool. And the dollar, once anchored in silver grains and golden ratios, lost 95% of its purchasing power, a slow-motion betrayal disguised as economic growth. The founders believed money should be honest, measurable, fixed, accountable. Modern America believes money should be flexible, political, adjustable, inflatable. One system protected the people from the state. The other system protects the state from the people. This is why the Coinage Act of 1792 matters, not as a historical artifact, but as a moral compass. A reminder that money is not just currency. Money is trust. And every time that trust weakens, societies don't collapse because of metal or paper. They collapse because belief dies. And once belief dies, the system has no anchor at all. And this is where the story tightens, where the quiet drift of centuries snaps into a single, terrifying realization. The Coinage Act of 1792 wasn't just forgotten. It was reversed. Everything the founders feared, everything they wrote laws to prevent, became the very foundation of the modern American financial system. In 1792, debasing the currency was a crime punishable by death. By the 21st century, debasement had become standard policy. In 1792, money was anchored in metal, transparent, weighable, incorruptible. Today, money is anchored in nothing but trust, trust that fewer and fewer people still feel. In 1792, the government feared abusing its monetary power. Today, it depends on that abuse to survive. And when you step back and look at the timeline, 1792 to 1873 to 1900 to 1933 to 1971 to now, you realize something chilling. Every major transformation of American money moved it further away from the people and closer to the institutions that benefit from controlling it. The Coinage Act wasn't a currency law. It was a firewall, a barrier between the citizen and the state, a reminder that money should serve the people, not the powerful. And one by one, every stone in that firewall was removed, not with explosions or revolutions, but with gentle signatures, acts of Congress, emergency measures, quiet Friday announcements, midnight monetary decisions. No drama, no headlines, just the slow, careful redirection of a nation's wealth and trust. Until the final moment, 1971, when the last anchor was cut and the dollar became a pure expression of political will. And suddenly, the same nation that once executed counterfeiters now legalized the very behavior it once fought to the point of death. This is the climax of the story. America didn't just abandon sound money. It abandoned the idea that money should be honest at all. That is what the founders feared. That is why they wrote 1792. That is why they tied the dollar to silver grain by grain. That is why Washington warned the nation that abuse of the currency was the fastest path to collapse. Because once a government controls money absolutely, it controls the value of work, the price of time, the meaning of savings, and the power of every citizen's future. Money becomes not a measure, but a weapon, and almost no one notices until it's too late. The Coinage Act of 1792 is more than a forgotten law. It is a mirror, a reflection of what America was meant to be and what it slowly became. Not because the metal changed, not because the paper changed, not because the technology changed, but because the trust changed. A nation that once anchored its money in truth now anchors it in promises, in confidence, in belief. But belief is fragile. And when belief falters, when people begin to question the value of the very thing they earn, save, and depend on, the entire system trembles. The founders understood that. They lived through the collapse of a currency. They wrote their warning into law. We didn't listen. Now the question isn't whether the old system is gone. It's whether we can remember what kept it stable in the first place. Honesty, accountability, fairness, real value. The future of American money depends on whether we learn that lesson in time, or repeat the same cycle every nation in history has faced when it forgets what its currency was meant to protect.